G'day, Jinx here, and this is my Doomtools tutorial 2, and in this one we're going to be talking about textures. Now this is quite a long tutorial, there's a lot of things to cover, so make sure you look at the description of the video where there'll be time codes that allow you to sort of jump around. So let's get into it, try and make this short by not waffling on, which is something I'm terrible at. So let's get to it. First thing we need to do is create our Doomtools project. I'm going to use the graphical application, but I tend to use the command line when I'm by myself, but the graphical application does the same thing and it's more visual for the video. We're going to do project type WAD. We're going to choose our folder, which in this case is going to be D drive, projects, Doom tutorials. I'm just going to copy the name of that directory, DT-tut02 textures. And we're just going to place it in there. We're going to do maps, assets, and deco hack. Now remember, you don't actually have to tick all these things. We're only going to really be talking about maps here. But when I do a project, I just like to have everything ticked so I have the option to do anything I want. If I go, you know what, I really do want to add an asset, then it's already set up to do it. So I just have everything ticked. For new textures, I'm going to do yes from the project itself with boom extensions. That's because I'm making a non-vanilla map. I'm making an MBF21 map, and I'm going no to the next ones. Create project, blammo. For the project name, I'm just going to paste in the directory name, which is DT-tut02-textures. And then I'm just going to browse to the iWAD, which in my case, I'm going to be using doom2.wad. Blammo. Now for the deco hack, I'm going to be doing MBF21, bam, and then I'm going to click do nothing, and everything's done. That's the project is now created. I'm just going to go file, save, workspace as, and just save it into that directory with the same name. And close, boom. Now you can see that it's created the project directory. Now last time, in the tutorial 1, I edited the DoomMake properties and I changed where the output WAD files that were going to be built were placed. I'm not going to do that this time, just so you can see how it runs defaultly, but I do prefer it the other way. The other thing we're going to do still, we're going to go to SRC and we're going to make a directory called WADs, and in there we're going to make a directory called textures. And this is because we want to use individual custom PNGs that we are editing on the fly, but we may still want to use community offered texture packs in WAD format. This will allow us to do both. So when you're loading up Doomtools, if I go to start a new project, if I go maps, so it says new textures. If I go textures from WADs, it'll create the texture WADs dir, the WADs texture dir that I just manually made, but it won't create any of the other folders that we want. So do the project with boom extensions and then manually add the texture WADs. And I'll show you all that working later on. Okay, so we've basically done it. Okay, that's the project is ready to go. So the next thing we need are textures. Now I've downloaded a whole nice bunch of textures that I've gotten from the Doomworld forum. If you just go to Doomworld and you go to resources, just at the very top, there's two really good ones. There's share your sprites and post your Doom textures. And if you just click on this, it's like 176 pages long. There's so much good stuff in here. And it's all community, free to use. All you need to do is credit people. So I've copied various textures from this that I'm going to use in this tutorial. Now, it's incredibly important, in my opinion, for the health of the entire scene to credit modders correctly. So I've got a credits file here, if I look into it, where I've named every single file that I've taken. I've then named who made it, and then I've shown the forum post that it came from. So say this skin texture, if I copy that and I paste this into my browser, it'll take me directly to the post where I got those textures. And the way you can do that is in Doomworld, just where the little heart is here where it says report, there's another little sort of share this post button. You click that and that'll give you the URL that takes you exactly to that post. And then I simply, in the text file, I just put the name of the person who made it and the post it's from as well. Okay, that's simple. So I'm going to copy that entire text file, that credits file that I've made externally, and in the source directory of my DoomMake folder, I'm going to go to the credits file in there, and I'm just going to paste that all in. And now all my credits are saved and going to be packaged up, and it's all kosher. Excellent. And now what we need to do is place our various textures into the correct directories. That's all you have to do. I have all these individual files that I've done. So we're going to use convert. And in the convert, we have the ones we're looking for are flats and texture1. In texture1, we want to copy in anything that is a wall texture. Flats have to go into the flat texture. So things you put on the floor or on the ceiling, they have to go into the flats folder. So I have a number of flats. I'm going to copy them in. So this is basically an animated flat that just flicks between two textures. And then we have a green flat and we have a sort of red flat. And that's all the flats that we've got a skull flat as well. So they're the flats that I've chosen from the forums. And I've put them all into source convert flats. Everything else pretty much goes into texture1, all the walls. So I'm going to copy all that into here. And again, this is an animated sort of spewing water thing. Then we have a skin texture, a wider skin texture. Then we have a little switch, which is just a single switch on. Then we have this sort of lion skull wall. And I think in all my moving stuff around trying to get this tutorial done, I accidentally deleted the second set of switches. So that's easy enough. We'll fix that. So switch 1, I've got the post written in my credits file. So let's just copy it. And here it is. So let's save this. Let's just copy this image, beg your pardon. The way switches work is that they kind of replace themselves. So unfortunately, this file that he's created, while has all the data, it's in the wrong position. So what we're going to do, we're going to basically create a new copy of this. And then I'm going to canvas size it and reduce the height by 50%. Like so. And I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to come up here and I'm just going to delete that bottom layer. Okay. And you can check the size here, 32 pixels high, that's fine. So we're just going to delete that. And then the bottom layer, I'm just going to move that up. Like so. So now we have all the locked textures on a single graphic. See how that works? I'm just going to save this, save as, PNG, tutorials, textures, source, convert, texture1, bam. And I'm just going to do C_SW1 off. And then I'm just going to do the same thing for the on switches. So I'll come over here. I'm going to go image, canvas size, height, percent, 50. Then I'm going to copy this half, 32 pixels high. That's perfect. Duplicate that layer first, delete them, and then come up here and just go up. And there you go. I now have all the on switches on a single texture that matches the other texture I just made. So let's just go PNG, and I'm going to call that on. It's off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on. So that texture is now perfect. And they've been saved Let's just, no, we don't want to save any of them. They've been saved into here as off, on. And remember, we have the, in the credits file, I had the name of the guy who created it. I've got the Doomworld, and I've just put a little edited by Jinx, just for a little self-aggrandization. Anyway, the point is we've placed all the wall textures into convert texture 1, and we've placed the flats into flats. And that's pretty much all we need to do. So I'm just going to open up a command line here in the root of my project dir. I'm going to type in DoomMake. Now remember, we haven't even made a map file yet. It does all its thing. So if I now go into the build dir, you can see it's created an assets WAD, it's created the deco hack stuff, it's created our main WAD, maps WAD, map text WAD, and a textures WAD. The textures WAD is the one we want to look at. So if I load up Slade, and I load up the textures WAD, you can see it's added all the flats and it's put it inside the flat start end thing. We've got the animation here, and we've got the skins, we've got switches, we've got the other switch, and we've got the other wall. Now, we can actually load up Ultimate Doom Builder. We can go new map, MBF21, but now we're going to go add resource. We're going to go files from WAD, and we're going to find in the build dir that textures.wad file. And then add it as a resource. Now, if I come down here, I go to a texture wall, I click on that. You can see textures.wad is here, and here are all my textures. That's simple. It's working, basically. So every time I run DoomMake, it is going to update that texture WAD if it detects changes, which in turn will update when I next load Ultimate Doom Builder. So I can add, remove, edit, do anything I want to all those textures that I've been adding to my project. And every time I run DoomMake, it's going to update that texture WAD, and my changes will be propagated into Ultimate Doom Builder and then into my final build release version. What this allows me to do is have PNG files in an editable state, loose on my drive. They're not inside WADs or anything. I can edit them, change them, do whatever I want to them, and any changes I do will just propagate right through the project all the way to the release build. It's pretty amazing. There is still a problem, okay? So for example, let's put this wall like this, okay? Let's just give it a person. Let's just make this a little bigger, shall we? Okay, so you see the walls there, you know, and we'll put this wall here, and we'll put this wall here. Okay, so we've basically got our thing working inside here. Now, if I then save this map, save as, I'm going to save it into source maps map01, and now run another DoomMake. We actually end up, if I go back into Slade, we've now got our map, and we've also got only the textures that we use. Remember how DoomMake only selects what you actually use in your maps and multiple maps? We've got them in there. And now I type run. You can see everything's working. Let me just type run-no sound. You can see everything's working, right? But here's the problem. If I try and run it from inside Ultimate Doom Builder, it'll error. And this is because of the way Doom textures work. So if I just load up Slade again, and I load up the textures WAD that Ultimate Doom Builder is using, you can see here are all the textures that I've added. But if I look at the texture one lump, if I just double click on that, you can see that that's a dummy one. You can see that it only has the files that I added in. It's actually a long story what texture 1 and texture 2 is. It's got to do with the Doom shareware version, and Doom 2 doesn't actually use texture 2, but it's like a legacy bit of code from the original Doom, whatever. The point is, unlike some things in Doom modding where it's additive, this texture lump will overwrite whatever other texture lumps you've got. So whatever the last texture lump you load, so whatever WAD has a texture lump that's the last in the load order, is the only texture lump that is ever going to be read. Now, because this texture lump only has exactly what we've put in it, that means that all the original Doom 2 textures, like every other iWAD texture, is not understood by the engine because it hasn't got any kind of reference inside the textures. So if I actually load up the build version, this is the version that has my map in it and everything, you can see it's still only got these 3 textures that we used. But if I look at the texture lump, you can see it's got all the textures from Doom in it, as well as the textures that we added. Okay, and that is why this will actually the actual build version will run, but our texture WAD won't run out of Ultimate Doom Builder. And this is where your own way you work comes into play. This does have some advantages. So basically, if I go to this texture and I click on it, I come down, see it says textures.wad, that's my custom texture file. If I click on it, it only shows my custom textures. And what that means is I can't preview through Ultimate Doom Builder using the preview button. To preview, I have to actually do a build and then run the build. So if I just run, I'll do no sound, this will run the actual build, whatever I've built. And this will work. I can preview this way, okay? Now, I use quite a lot of bat files, and I will make a video showing my bat files. But basically what that run bat file basically does is just load up the build that I've done. So to preview, I have to go DoomMake and then I have to type run. And that's every time I want to preview what's happening here, because if I preview inside Ultimate Doom Builder, it will crash. So to do a preview, I need to run DoomMake to, it's not going to do anything because I haven't changed anything, but I need to run DoomMake so it like imports the newly saved map file, right? So you actually have to save the map file in Ultimate Doom Builder, run DoomMake, and then run the WAD. It's a little cumbersome, but the advantage is that when I'm doing my editing, all my custom textures are all separate and very, very clear and easy to click on, which I like. There is a way around this though, if you wish. If you come to your folder, you go to your source folder, you go to textures, there's a texture here called texture 1 and texture 2. We don't use texture 2, so I'm going to leave that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that texture file out of there. I've just saved it over here. So there is no texture in there anymore. Okay, just so you just delete the texture file. Now, when I go to my DoomMake, and I'm going to type -- targets. And this will show, it's like a help thing, and it will show you all the different things you can do with DoomMake, the base abilities, right? The base targets. We're looking for rebuild textures, okay? So if I look at the original texture file that we moved out of there, you can see it's got nothing in it. The only thing in it is the null texture, which you should leave. But now if I run DoomMake rebuild textures, it's going to rebuild that texture 1 file. And now if I look at it, you can see it's got all the Doom 2 textures built into it, made from all the patches. It's ready to go. Now I can run DoomMake. Let me just close TextureWad here. Remember, in the original TextureWad, if I clicked on texture 1, it only had the ones that I made. But now if I run DoomMake and I load up that TextureWad again, I load up texture 1, you can see it has all the Doom 2 textures in there, okay? This means if I go into my Doom Builder and I now run it, it'll now work, see? Because it's now got a correctly formatted texture WAD. The downside though, is that now when I go to change my textures, if I click on my texture WAD, you can see that all the textures from Doom 2 are part of that WAD. Just to be clear, the textures aren't actually saved into the WAD file itself. This is just a texture lump that tells Doom how to display those textures through the patches and, you know, fancy source port kind of stuff. So what the texture lump is doing, even though it has all the textures for Doom 2 listed, it's actually pulling those textures when you're in the game from the iWAD, not from your own WAD. So there are no actual original copyrighted Doom 2 textures in your WAD. We're just talking about the texture lump, which tells Doom itself how to read the textures from memory. So it's really a toss-up on how you want to do it. Do you want it all separated like I showed you before and have a slightly more convoluted way of testing your map? Or do you want to have it very easy to test your map, but a little bit harder to select your textures? And remember, if you've named your textures fine, it's not a problem. So for example, all mine basically are C underscore for custom. And that's a way I can just type into the filter C underscore and I can see all my own textures. And that way I've got sort of the best of both worlds. Now, there is a little trick you can do to kind of get around this whole texture X thing problem. And this is something that I do. When you load up the file in Doom Builder, because of the way Doom works and the way these textures are quite small, you know, compared to modern computers, it actually loads the entire texture lumps into your memory. It's not loading off the disk at all, really. When I load my map and I go into here and I go into my textures, it's reading the texture lump from memory now, which means if I change the actual texture WAD externally after I've loaded the map, it's still going to read the same. And I'll show you what I mean. So basically, in my scripts folder, I make a new folder called TextureX, and in that I have Texture 1 All and Texture 1 Restricted. And they're just the files I was showing you before. So if I delete Texture 1 here, and then I copy in Texture 1 Restricted, which is the one that doesn't have all the Doom textures in it, and then I go DoomMake textures, it'll rebuild the textures WAD, okay? And remember, you can get, by typing DoomMake -- targets, you can get all the build targets. So we're just building the texture WAD. If I go back to Doom Builder and I load my map again, and I come into here, you can see I've only got the 10 textures. I'll just turn off this thing, use textures at the top just to make it clearer. So this is the WAD that I'm using at the moment. It's only got the 10 textures. This is the one that will not play from inside Ultimate Doom Builder because it errors. But now that I've actually loaded this up, if I go back to my files and I copy this one over, so if I delete Texture 1, I come to my Textures All, which I built using that rebuild thing, and I just copy that over, and then I run DoomMake textures again. Now, because if I load up that texture WAD now, it's got all the Doom textures in it, as it should, which means I can now run it from Ultimate Doom Builder. But, and here's the cool bit, because it's got the old WAD loaded, it still only shows my custom textures in that little section. And that's just a little tweak that you can do. Now, I've got a bat file that does this for me. So basically, I just put my files into this directory scripts TextureX, and then I can just run a bat file to get it to work. Like I'll talk about my bat files in another video, but basically I've just got set texture all and set texture restricted, and that fixes it. So if I type in and I just go run set texture x restricted, it just copies the file and rebuilds the texture. So if I then open up the texture lump, come in here, you can see it's only got the my textures. And if I type set texture x all, rebuilds the texture wad, and now it's got all the Doom textures. So that's just a little trick that you can do to basically still inside Ultimate Doom Builder have only your custom textures listed in your texture wad, but still be able to preview correctly. Now let's just have a quick look at something else. Here's a wall we haven't used. If I come down here, go to my textures, I'll just go C underscore, I'll go my anim, and I'll run a test. I come over here, there's no animation. We still need to program into our build project the animation frames for this animated wall and the animated flat, as well as the switches, because at the moment the switches are just wall textures. If you click on them, they're not going to turn on and off like they're supposed to. You've still got to make the switch file and the animation file, and we'll do that next. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly sort of rebuild this demo file just so I can make it a little bit more robust for what I'm going to do. Okay, so I've just made a little demo wad. So what this wad is going to be doing is demonstrating all our textures that I've created, okay? And I'm going to create a SkyTexture as well. That's why this is open up here. And so we've got some switches. I'll talk about this one in a sec. And this is just a demo file for us to see everything in action. We'll just clean our build directory and then remake it. And then I'll just run it, no sound. So this is our file at the moment, okay? So we've got all our textures are in here, and I've created a number of switches. It helps if I actually have my use key set up. And this is just, it just drops up and down this, this thing here. So there's 3 switches, but they're not animating, and neither is this animated wall. You see, it's not animating. And neither is this animated flat. So it's basically working, but it's also not working. So let's just quickly go in how to get that working. And it's actually very, very simple. So you just need to come into your DoomMake project, go to source and go to textures. Don't go into convert, just go into textures. And there should be a text file there called DEF SWANI, or definitions for switches and animations. So we're just going to edit that text file and take a look at it. You have these little headers here. So this is for switches, and this is for flats, and this is for textures. Very, very simple. Now, the way switches work is that there's a number, which is basically for the episode number. There's shareware Doom, registered Doom, and all versions. So unless you have really specific reasons, you're basically going to always use number 3. And we've got 2 switches in our setup. So if I go to convert, texture 1, we have SW1 switch off, SW1 switch on, and then SW2 off, and then SW2 on. So that's basically all we need to do. So we're going to type in 3. The first column, unintuitively, is always the off. Okay, so we'll just make that off. We'll just make that on. And then we'll make another switch. This is switch 2 off. And this is switch 2 on. Okay, and that is it. That's all I have to do for my switches. The animated flats and the animated textures are equally similar in how easy they are to use. For example, this one, the first column is the speed. That's how many ticks each frame is going to last for. So by default, a good one is 8, but you can adjust this how you want. So it's 8 frames, and then you want to have your last frame of the animation and then the first frame of the animation. So our animated flat, right, is basically just 2 frames. So it doesn't really matter. Okay. So we're just going to go 8, flan 2, flan 1. Okay. And you should probably, it doesn't really matter if you have it in all caps or not, but it's going to turn it into all caps when it creates the file. So all we've done is we've said for our flats, we want it to be 8 frames between each one. We want it to have flan 2 as the last texture and flan 1 as the first texture. Let's actually make it 4, make it a bit faster. And then it's the exact same things for textures. So if we go into our texture.dir, we have 3 frames of animation for the dripping blood. 1, 2, 3. Starts at anim 1 and ends at anim 3. So all we need to do is copy that, give it 8 frames. We're going to go anim 3, so the last frame first, and then anim 1 for the next frame. Bam. And that is basically it. We just save that text file, and then we just remake the WAD, and then we just run it with no sound. And now you can see the texture is animated. He's now spewing the blood. Also, when we click the switch, it's now turning on and off. Okay, you can see it a bit easier with this one. I say on and off. Also, our animated floor flat is also working. So that is literally all you need to do. Very, very, very simple. So just to recap, you just go into the animation definition text file and you just follow the examples. For switches, you basically want to just make it type 3, and then in the first column you have your off, and on the second column you have your on. And then for your flats and for your textures, it's the speed per tick, like how long each frame per tick. The first column is the last frame, and the second one is the first frame, and it just goes in numeric or alphabetical order. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into my texture dump that I made, and I have a custom sky here. Okay, so this is a custom sky that I'm going to add to my project. Now this custom sky, I've already got the credits in here. It's from Skybox by Eardrop, and of course I've got the Doomworld link for it. Now, SkyTextures are basically just textures. So I'm just going to go to my convert folder. I'm going to go to texture 1, and I'm going to copy all of those things in like so. And then I'm going to find the very last frame, which is 64, animation file. And in textures, I'm just going to go 8, 64, 01. And now the sky, animated sky is in. Now, I know that this animated sky has got 64 frames. It's actually quite fast. So we're going to make it 2 frames per tick instead of 8. And that's just going to make it animate a bit quicker for 32 frames. Very, very cool. And once again, we're just going to go DoomMake textures. And now we're going to come in here. Oh wait, I've got to reload the file to reload the new texture map. The new TextureWad, beg your pardon. There it is. I'll just save that and we'll just do a preview. And you can see our texture, our SkyTexture is now functional. Okay, very, very nice. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a little control sector over here. I'm going to right click on one of the line defs. I'm going to come down to my action and I'm just going to type in Sky and do SkyTransfer to tag sectors. And I'm just going to grab texture and put it on the upper texture spot like so. And I'll just tag that to tag 2. And now we have our sky. Okay, so now we have our test thing and it's completely working. So we'll come back into our build. We'll just do another DoomMake. We'll just run it with no sound. And actually in the application, we've got our animated sky. We've got our animated flats. We've got all our textures showing up. We've got our switches animating correctly. And there's basically one more thing I need to show you. So this thing here I've set up as a switch, okay? But it's obviously not looking very much like a switch. So how can we make that better? I just load up Slade. I'm just going to go new WAD archive. And I'm just going to import into that, going to convert, going to textures. I'm just going to import in skin 01 and I'm going to import in these 2 buttons. Okay. Now you can do this in, actually we can do this inside our texture file, in fact, to make it, we'll just make it easy. We'll do it inside our texture file. Okay, so this is our texture file. You can see that all the sky textures are now inside it as well. But basically, if we go into our flats, into our texture X here, you can see all the Doom textures and everything we want. But we can also create our own textures. And this is something a lot of people don't do, particularly new people. So basically, if I go new, right, new texture, Control N, I'm going to make this 128 by 128. I'm going to go from patch and I'm just going to go C underscore and choose skin 2, right? And I'm going to call this C underscore switch 3 off, okay? And then over here in the patches area, I'm going to go new and I'm going to take the switch off and I'm going to place this in the center. So it's 128 by 128. This is a 32 by 32 pixel image, which basically means 48, not 38. 48 by 48 is centered because it's reading from the top left-hand corner pixel. So what I've done here is I've made a custom texture out of a patch. And if I saved this and then I ran it and stuff, I could assign this as a texture, just like a normal texture, even though I haven't actually added any more texture data into the WAD. I've created the texture from scratch. This is an incredibly powerful thing that you can do. For example, you see a lot of WADs where they have all these different variations of their textures, but they could have actually only created little patches, like little squares, and then built the textures manually in here. And they go, oh, you know what? I wish I had a television screen inside that texture. They could just build it this way instead of actually building it in Photoshop. Now, the thing is, currently, and it's on the to-do list, but it's way down the list, Doomtools does not have a nice graphical editor like Slade, but you can build your texture in Slade like this and then use the resulting data to create it inside your Doomtools project. So let me just go back to my project, and then I come down into my texture file here. Let's edit it. Basically, this here is the patch information, okay? So the top one is the name of the texture that Doom is going to read. And then here you have the names of all the patches in order, you know, kind of like a stack, like a sandwich. So the one at the bottom here is the one that appears at the top of the stack. So you can build your texture here and it'll be permanently locked into the program. So we're going to create a new texture. We're going to call it custom switch 3. Switch 3 off, and it's 128 by 128. That's the name of our new texture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's important that your texture names are always 8 characters. Then we're going to make a patch and another patch, 2 patches. Our first patch, as you can see here, C_skin2. Okay, so that is C_skn2. And it's got no offset, so it's just 0, 0. Our second one is C_SW2 off, and the offset was 48 by 48. And then I just need to do the exact same thing. And I'm going to make this one on. And this one on. And that's all I need to do. I've manually built the patch file inside the texture file. But the important thing is you can use Slade to design it and then just copy the data into the new thing. So you've got the patch list here. You have the patch properties here. And you know, you just basically copy that data. So now, if I come into here and I go DoomMake textures, just to rebuild that texture file, and I go to load it, you'll see I can't actually find it here because these are the physical textures, right? They're the physical textures. But we've only created a virtual texture, is what I call them, inside the texture one lump. So now, if I go into my folder here, reload the map, come down here and I change this, we now have the new texture off and on. So blam, blam, boom, come into here. I'll just go DoomMake. I'll just go run. And there you go. Our texture is now in there, but it's not clicking because we still have to add it to the switch data that we made as well. So then we got to go back into our our define switch and animation folder. We go up to our switches and we're just going to go bam, and we're going to go switch 3 off, switch 3 on, save that, rebuild, and run with no sound. And now that's working. And that's basically every single texture trick I know from the base to get custom textures in. We've got our custom sky, we've got animated flats, we've got switches, and we've got animated walls. And that is basically it. We've even been able to create our own custom patches, like our own quote unquote virtual textures, all in that editable open source project setup that I love about Doomtools. One thing to note though, is before I told you this sort of trick I do where I have inside my scriptster, I kind of have a custom TextureX that's got texture or texture restricted. If you're using that method, which I like to use, you also need to add the new virtual patches to both those textures. So This is my texture restricted. I'll just save that. And this is my texture all. Bam. And now that that same functionality is working. Because basically if I'm in here, because I'm using the texture file that is only got the textures we want in it, right? So if I load up the texture one, it's basically just got our own things. Like before, if I try and run this, it's going to error, okay? But of course now I can just rebuild that by going set texture all and now run it and it will work. But the point is I have to put those patch files that I created, the virtual textures, into those texture files manually for both of them rather than just the one in the folder. Okay, and that is that. That is basically everything to do with textures. There is only one more thing I want to talk about, which is sort of slightly separate to textures. So I'm just going to load up my Doom2.wad and I'm just going to type into the filter m_d and show you the mdoom graphic, which is basically just the title that appears above your text when you start a new game. So hit the escape, the Doom title of your WAD will pop up. In this case, it says Doom 2. Now, I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit to make it a bit easier for me to fit on the screen on the YouTube. I should have done this the whole time. But basically, at the bottom of Slade, it has these offsets that allows you to change the position of some of the graphics in Doom. So basically, say you can change a lot of stuff. This is how you can make really interesting custom HUDs and all this kind of stuff very, very easily using these offsets. Now in Doomtools, you can mimic this same kind of offset behavior by adding some extra files into your convert directory. If you go to the Doomtool website, there's a tool called image convert. So Doomtools image convert. And this is what Doomtools is using to do the conversion process. And there's a lot of information here and how it all works and what you can do with it. But one of the things it can do is read these text files. Here it is here, metadata info, where you can tell it what kind of type of graphic it is, and most importantly, the offsets here, okay? So all you need to do to get this to work is to create a text file in the correct directory and then format it. And the formatting is almost always going to be the title of the actual lump, the type of lump, and then the offset. It's all written in this in the image convert help file here. I've created an mdoom4r project called Doomtools tutorials. Nice. And I'm just going to copy that into source, convert graphics like so. And then I'm just going to actually just run this and show you what it looks like. So we go DoomMake, and then I'll go run, no sound menu. And that's what we look like. So you can see there's a big gap and it's sort of a bit to the right. Doesn't look very good, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new text file in this area, and the text file is just dimgconv.txt for Doomtools image convert. And this is just a little file which, while the converter is running, it'll read. So let's edit that. And all we're going to do is basically copy exactly what it says on the help file. So we come down here and they give you a little graphic example down here. We'll just copy that. We'll paste it in here. So the mdoom lump, it is a graphic lump, and we want to change it, we'll just leave the 30 minus 24 in, the default, and show you what that looks like. And then you can see it running. So we just run DoomMake again. We do the run, and you can see how it's moved positions. And that's basically all there is to it. Just a little bit of trial and error. There are some little tricks you can do. Basically, if you get your source port to render without any scaling, you get the exact pixel counts, and then you can just adjust it in editor to get the exact numbers. But, you know, I think most people, including myself, will just do it by trial and error. So I'm going to go, how about minus 15, and we'll make this 10. How's that? Let's try that. I'm just going to do some trial and error until I get this in the right position. So yeah, it's in position now. It's permanent, and of course we can adjust the graphic any way we want, and it will update. And as long as we keep the same total size for the graphic, the offset will work. Anyway, that's how you do offsets in Doomtools, by creating a text file for the image converter called dimageconvert.text. So it's dimgconv.text, and then you simply type in the lump, the type of graphic it is, and then the offset. It's that simple. Okay, so a bit of construction work has happened outside, but I'm really pressed for time, so I can't put this off any longer. So if there's a lot of clunking noises, I'm sorry. But there is actually another way to do offsets in Doomtools. Now, I don't particularly recommend this, but it is important to know about it. Basically, ZDoom introduced this thing they call GRAB chunks. And it's a custom chunk that you write at the base of a PNG file that contains the offsets. This is how GZDoom handles PK3 formats, where it's just like files dropped into directories, and still understand how the offsets and stuff work. It's basically just the offset data written to the back of the PNG. Now, Doomtools will read GRAB chunks, and I'll just show you how to set them. So let's just go into our directory. We're going to get rid of the Doom image convert text file thing we made. And I'll just rerun DoomMake just to show you it's now out of position again. What you can do, you can load up Slade and go to Open Directory, not Archive or anything. Go to your project, go into your source, go into your convert, go into your graphics, and open up that directory, and you'll find your Doom thing here. And you can just type the offset into the offsets at the bottom of Slade. So the offset we used was 4 minus 13. So I can just type in 4 minus 13. And then I save, and it will actually save the chunk into the PNG permanently. Now, I run the DoomMake. You can see it's now in position. And this is very, very handy if you've got graphics and they're all sorted and you don't need to adjust them. The problem is, arguably the best thing about Doomtools is that it keeps all your files in this kind of open, editable way. So if you load up the PNG in another edit application, change it somehow, and then resave it, it's not going to save that chunk because it's a priority format. Okay, so that chunk is going to be destroyed every time you change the graphics. If you use the text file system, it doesn't matter because the chunk is actually stored in the text file, not in the PNG itself. But it's just worth noting that the Doomtools will read these chunks, and you can embed them into the PNGs just like you can when you're doing ZDoom. I actually wonder what happens if you use a chunk and you use the DM convert. Will it be additive? Let's just find out. I've never done that before. Didn't make it affect. Okay, so we're good. Anyway, so that is how you do offsets to graphics. And remember, offsets isn't just graphics. It can work on color maps, and there's all sorts of tricks you can do, but it's done through those Doomtools image convert text files. And you just place the text file in any directory where you want the offsets and the various parameters to happen. In this case, we were placing it in the graphics folder because that's where the mdoom graphic is currently stored. Right, what's next? The end of the tutorial. New game. blammo, and everything's funky-dory. Oh, there's one more thing. Okay, do you remember right at the beginning when we made our source directory, we made a directory called WADs and we made a directory called textures. This is for the other way to use custom textures, and you can actually use this in combination with the custom textures that we've made. And I'll show you how. Basically, let me just go to my server, games, we go to Doom, we go to resources, textures, and I'll just come down here and I'll just copy two very famous texture packs. I'll copy Jimmy Text and I'll copy OTex. And I'm just copying them into the source WADs textures folder. Now, if I load up Doomtools, load up Ultimate Doom Builder, I load up our map. Now I'm just going to, I'm going to load up our map, and just as it's loading, I'm going to click on the Add Resource button. I'm going to go WAD file, and I'm going to open from the source directory WADs, textures, Jimmy Text, and WADs, textures, OTex, and just hit OK. So now I've loaded up our map, but I've added in some extra resource WADs that I've taken from, and remember, you got to edit your credits file so everything's recorded in the credits. So I'm just going to add some things to my map here. Go to the lower, and I come down. I've now got Jimmy Text and OTex. So let's click on Jimmy Text. Let's click on OTex, and we'll find a very famous OTex, which is obviously OTex. Why don't we get one of the animated computer walls? And I'll just make another one. And this one I'll do with a Jimmy Text. Now the Jimmy textures are a little bit harder to spot because the point of Jimmy Text is to sort of redesign the classic DoomWad, Doom 2 textures, you know, with some tweaks. But because of that, they're not as recognizable at a glance. But there are some kind of fancy new boxes, like crates. Here we are, these UAC crates. Okay, so basically all I've done here is I've placed in some new flats and some new textures. Here's the problem. If I do a preview of this, we're going to get some weird things going on. It's loading, but we're having all sorts of problems. The flats are showing up at least. This thing's showing up. This thing isn't showing the correct one. And it's all going wonk. You know, we've got missing textures. It's not good. And this is basically because of that texture thing that I told you before. Basically, Jimmy Text and OTex 1.1 both have the texture one with all the other data in it, just like we had before. It can only use whatever's the last one loaded. So if I look at my load order, map options, you can see OTex is the last one being loaded, which means that it is overriding the texture data for the other values. Not cool. But it actually doesn't matter when we relate it to our build project. So if I now go DoomMake and build a new project from what we have, and then I run it, no sound, we actually get all the textures, so they're animated and they're the correct textures from the WAD. You know, we've got the you know, the floor textures here, but we've also got all our textures are showing up as well. You know what I mean? So that is how you can use your WAD files as well. They basically means that you just have to, you can't do previews from inside Ultimate Doom Builder. But one of the things you've got to remember is that Doomtools is like an additive build system, which basically means that it'll only really propagate changes. So if you do a build and it takes ages to compile your project, if you only change small things, usually it will not take the same time to build because it's only got to make those small adjustments, which means that it's actually pretty fast to build and do your testing of your map by you doing actual builds. And of course, there are some texture WADs that for some reason just do not work like this. I do not know why. For example, there's a very famous TextureWad by Mui, which is like all animated skies. And for some reason, it just does not work. I have no idea why. Doomtools can't extract the files from it. But that's not a problem. You can still manually explode these map file projects that are from the community and take the files that you want and place them in your directories and just build the project as you like. But most TextureWads, you'll be able to just place inside the WAD and use. But just remember that if you're having problems and if you really want that preview from inside Ultimate Doom Builder, you will need to merge the WADs manually. And Doomtools does have this covered, but this is a new feature and it's not quite fully there yet. So I'll just very quickly talk about it. Basically, there's a function inside tools, inside textures called wtexport or wtexport or whatever. And if you go to wtexport, the help, you can see that it has some limitations. It doesn't read animation definitions yet. So basically it will not work with animated textures, which is a real bummer. But this thing here will eventually work. And it's actually something you can put into a command line, which means you can put it into a bat file, which means that when you do your DoomMake, you can actually set up the scripting so it'll actually combine all your WADs, merge them all together and output a Ultimate Doom Builder compatible resource file, which will allow you to do the previews. So that's something to look forward to in the future. But for now, just do it the way I gave you the example. And if that's giving you problems, you just extract the files from the WAD and place them in your source dirs, just like your own custom textures. And that'll also work. Oh, I've done everything else. I may as well show you how to extract and manually merge as well. And then everything's done. So basically, let's have a look at the MUI pack, which for some reason, don't ask me why, it doesn't work. So if I go into source, copy it into my WADs textures folder. Oh, it's already there. I load up my Ultimate Doom Builder. I load up my map. I'm going to add that resource, just like we did with the other ones that worked. Now we're going to come down here. I've made this little wall. And I'm just going to go blam into MUI pack. We want skidoo, I think it's called. Yep. And we'll just put that on this wall. Okay. Now, theoretically, that should work. So we'll save this. We'll come into our thing. We'll DoomMake. And then we'll run. No sound. All the other textures are working, but look, it's completely missing. But the object's there. We just can't see it because it's missing. I do not know why this happens, but you can get around it by just rebuilding this yourself. So what we're going to do is let's just close this map file. We'll come over here. We're going to get the MUI pack out of the resource directory, and then we're going to load it up in Slade. So open Slade, open directory, and we're going to load up our WAD. Now we're going to go skdo, it's skidoo 0 all the way to 31. Now, just looking at this, maybe the reason this isn't working is because there's actually spaces in their file names. I didn't even know you could do that. I never use spaces. I always use underscores and stuff. Maybe that's why it's doing it. Whatever. The point is, let's just select all those graphics. We're going to right click and we're going to go export. We're not going to go export as PNG. I mean, you can if you want, but why bother? We know that these are perfectly right and they're all set up. Let's just use them how they are. So we're just going to go into our tutorial. We're going to go into scripts, and instead of going into convert, we're just going to go straight into textures, straight into texture 1, and just save them all in there. So if I go back into my folder, textures, texture 1, it saved them all as LMP files. Now, I don't like the fact that that's got spaces, so I'm going to actually rename these files. We'll call it skdo, okay, blammo. So I've basically just renamed them from 01 to 31. Most WADs you won't need to do that. It's very weird to me that they have spaces in their file names. That could be why it's not working correctly with Doomtools. Anyway, we now have the lumps in, right? So all we need now is if we just have a look at the animated data, the animation data for the MUI pack, we come down here and we find somewhere in here, skdo, here it is, skdo. It is a speed of 2. So that's all we need. So just like our own animated files, we find the definition text file for definitions of switches and animations. We edit it. We come down to the textures thing. We have an animation of 2. What do we call it? We call them skdo 31. So we go skdo 31 because you put the last first, and then this one was 01. And that's it. It's now entered in. So just like before, we then rebuild our personal texture file, which is DoomMake textures. And that's rebuild our file. And now let's go back into Doom Builder. So I go into Doom Builder, I open it up. We'll remove that MUI pack because we're not using it anymore. I come down here and this is now blank again. But if I go into the editor, I go to Textures.wad, which is my textures that I've personally added. I go skd, and there are all the textures that I've done. We whack it in. Okay, save that. We now do a DoomMake, and we do a run, and boom, it's now imported. So all we really did is manually extracted them, put them into our source directories, and that's a way you can make your own Ultimate Doom Builder preview compatible WADs, do whatever you want. So you do that basically if you have any problems. And that's basically it. That's everything I know about mapping in Doomtools. There's probably a lot more. If you know more, you can teach me. I'd love to know. But we have switches, we've got our flats working, animated flats working, we've got resources coming from community WAD projects, we've got resources coming from community WAD projects that we've manually merged into our own WAD. We have custom textures that we've added, custom switches, we even have patches, animated flats, floors, and we are done. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you guys next time.